I turn it on.
Super. So, thank you everybody, and hello and welcome. My name is Michal, and this is the second edition of Uroboros Festival. It's 2021, and we still didn't change the subject, and we are still talking about designing in troubling times, which was also the main topic for the first edition for of the festival. Thank you everybody, and hello and welcome. My name is Michal, and this is the second edition of apps. And now it was just my YouTube playing, so you need all the time these errors in the beginnings. So we stick to the main topic because we decided that due to circumstances, situation is not changing a lot, and we still can explore more and bring more artists, designers, researchers to help us to develop and discuss about this topic. In the beginning, I just would like, before I will welcome our artists of today's session, which will consist of the short presentation and then discussion afterwards. I also would like to say that you are very welcome to join us with your questions through YouTube on the YouTube stream, or also use the Discord channel. We will shortly after the intro, I will share the Discord link in a YouTube chat, so you can also jump into Discord and talk to us. Talk to us. What I would like to also say that the festival was supported by Abacus Foundation and also by public funds provided by Slovak Art Council and also City of Prague. This event is part of the track focused on algorithmic governance, when we try to question different topics related to chain, bonds, and digital sovereignty. And there is more and more events ahead of us. This is our second event in this track. And super. And also the last thing, which will be like the first thing to start this event itself. It's my pleasure to welcome here on stage, on this virtual stage of Uroboros Festival, DADA. DADA and IC. DADA is an online platform where people from around the world can create spontaneous visual conversations together in spite of language, distance, nationality, or other artificial boundaries. On DADA, art is a means of communication, and its creative and collaborative nature fosters strong bonds between people. It's free and liberating experience. And I would like to very much welcome here those who represent, and you already maybe noticed that this panel, this discussion will bring very different topics, but one of them will be definitely maybe the question also of the woman in the crypto art, actually, because I'm very happy to welcome here Beatriz Ramos, who is a visual artist and ex-entrepreneur who is transitioning now to full-time social anarchist, and this will be definitely the topic for the later discussion. She is a creator of DADA and also of the invisible economy, which is the main topic of today's session. So welcome, Beatriz.
Thank you. I will say that I'm a full-time social anarchist now. So
full-time, yeah. so this is definitely something we have to discuss. Like, what does it mean to be full-time social anarchist? Next to her, but I have to admit that I really don't know if you've seen Judy Mam next to the Beatrice, but Judy Mam is a co-creator of DADA art, and before the DADA, she was working in advertising as a director, and she likes writing, and we will discuss many different topics about tokenization and NFTs. I hope that next to the Judy you can see Lenara, who is a Berlin-based artist and researcher, which focus on collaboration, community, currencies, and money experiments. And she is a founder of Coinspiration.org. So we believe that Lenara will introduce us a little also in this project, an online platform that promotes new form of currencies and value exchange. And last not least, Sparrow, who created the Women of Crypto Art, WOCA, through which she provides a space where anyone can identify as a woman, so they can feel welcome and participate in initiatives aimed at ensuring women arts and voices that those are seen and heard at the NFT space, which I believe will be also a topic to discuss. So welcome everybody, and the last, because our invitation to this room also accepted Jakub Lantz, and Jakub Lantz is I like Jakub because of the combination of the psychology and computer science, and Jakub is right now working many different projects, also teaching at Masaryk University. He's very much interested topic of commons. And you can also find him in the Holochain network. And in the end, we will also a little bit discuss relation of Holochain to the DADA. So maybe that's it from me. I hope that I didn't forget anybody or anything. Again, welcome to this floor of Uroboros, and Beatrice. Maybe if I could ask you to kick this session off for us.
Okay. Yeah, great. Let me show presentation so that people can get an idea of DADA. Let me know when you see it. So I hope through the presentation you'll see a little bit of where we started, where we are now, and how we see in general the entire ecosystem of NFTs and crypto art, and what are the opportunities for artists. So DADA, as you said, is a social. It started as a social network. It's now really a place where people speak to each other through drawings. And so when you see here, every panel is made by a different person. And so what is beautiful about it is that you make a drawing, and somebody in any parts in the world can answer you with another drawing. And so it basically adds to that visual conversation. And we have conversations that are like 40 drawings, 80 drawings, 200 drawings from people all over the world. And the process is all spontaneous. You answer to whoever you want to answer to. And when you receive a reply from, there's a drawing that somebody took 2 hours, 3 hours, or even half an hour to make a drawing that is in reply to your drawing, that really makes, it's really a conversation. You really feel the other person, and we create these like really strong bonds. So there are thousands of these visual conversations on DADA. They're done, all of them in the platform with our simple tools. And so the question was that we had this beautiful community where everybody was becoming really close friends, and it's really generous. Everybody was doing this for intrinsic rewards. It has never been ways to sell anything on DADA. And so the question was how you make this community sustainable. How do you introduce the money into the equation without destroying everything that makes DADA so creative and so beautiful, right? And that is the $1 million question, because we've been working on this question for the last 4 years. And now we have some answers, and the answers are within visible economy. But just to give a little bit of context, in 2017, we came into blockchain looking for ways of creating our community sustainable, and decentralization sounded like a great, new possibility that wasn't there before. And so I'm a social anarchist. I used to be an entrepreneur, and that's the conflict right there, right? So for me, it was like a no-brainer. Let's go into this decentralized world. When we got in there, we got right before CryptoPunks issued. The Larva Labs issued the CryptoPunks. And so we were able to use their smart contracts to launch this collection that is called the Crips and Weirdos. We worked that summer and launched by Halloween. And so this was one of the first projects ever to be minted on the Ethereum platform. And it's notable in one important aspect. One is that it was one of the first times that artists actually minted art on Ethereum, but also because it was the first time smart contracts had coded royalties for artists. And so at that time, we actually coded 40% of royalties on the profit. So every time that the artworks will be resold, automatically through the smart contracts, those royalties will be distributed. And so that was very, very, very early on. There was no really demand there. At that time, the question we were actually asking ourselves was, will anybody who get this, whether by gift or by buying them, will feel that they own it, right? Would people feel they own digital art? And the answer was quickly yes. And so after this, CryptoKitties came up, and it became really evident that NFTs, they were not called NFTs, were called, I don't know, blockchain art or crypto art or collectibles. But it became clear that non-fungible tokens was going to be an important part of this ecosystem. And so the question for us, though, was, well, this is true, but then everything was about speculation even back then. So CryptoKitties was all about speculation, but it was a game. But then we saw Rare Peppers go for like $40,000, you know, and so we became really concerned that this kind of speculation, even if we were selling digital art and being part of a new ecosystem, new market with all the possibilities that the blockchain gave us, that we will end up in the same place that we were trying to run against, which is the market and the values of the market and the power dynamics of the market. And so we knew that we have collections that are very important in the ecosystem, like the Crypts and Weirdos are historically important. This was the first time crypto art, as we know it, was actually being made at a major museum. We did a live drawing performance with 20 artists around the world and some in situ at the Tate Modern in New York, in London. And this was the result, the actual artwork that resulted from it. So we know that all of this, that this kind of conversations have a lot of value for the market. Yet we stopped selling anything. We never put this on sale. We stopped selling the Crypts and Weirdos. Back in 2018, we decided to put everything out of the market and actually block secondary sales because the ecosystem wouldn't respect the royalties. So if one of these artworks will be sold on OpenSea, the artist wouldn't get royalties. So we just decided to block everything and concentrate on what is today the invisible economy. So basically we went in really deep, trying to understand what is it that makes the extreme inequality we see in the world, because it's not just art, right? Art is just a very easy way of looking at this in terms of impact and ethics, but it's really all across the board. So where does the extreme inequality comes from? Do we really have something even close to meritocracy, or why do we believe that we have meritocracy? What are these star systems, this winner or take all systems that produce a power law distribution where you have just a few winners taking most of the rewards? What does that transfer of wealth means when it comes to art, right? For us, copyright is a way of transferring wealth from artists to companies, or secondary markets are a way of transferring wealth from artists to collectors. or investors. What does it mean that we the commodification of everything, but in terms of art, that we're commodifying art, that we're actually selling art? What is it that we're selling? And then private property and everything that has to do with capital gains, because extreme inequality is very tied with the fact that 60% of the wealth, the 1%, 60% of the wealth of the 1% comes from capital gains. So this means it comes from buying something low and selling high, and stocks, art, real estate. It means that none of that goes into the economy, and not productive capital. And so we looked at the whole economy and everything from different perspectives, and we came out with a theory, our hypothesis, that was a very well argumented hypothesis that you can read our paper. It's called The Invisible Economy, and you can find it online. That basically is based on one important insight, which is based on decades of research. This is well known. There's tons of evidence that when our intrinsic rewards, when our intrinsic motivations are replaced by extrinsic rewards, so my love for art, for collecting art or for making art, is replaced by a salary or some profits or return on investment, the intrinsic motivations diminish or completely disappear. And this is true for everyone, everybody, in every context. And so the theory that we had at the time, and this is a year ago, was then in order to preserve the intrinsic motivations of artists, in our case, we have to radically separate the art making from the market. And this meant that the economy had to be invisible. Basically, we had to make invisible everything that was transactional, everything that it has to do with economics. And so we created our own incentive framework around to access we need, of course, the minimum for people, the minimum baseline for people to live, so that you're not preoccupied because you can't pay your rent and have food on your table. So the minimum of that, so that people can actually go and pursue their intrinsic rewards. And then another exit, which was, and this is a very important one, that balance between freedom and fairness, right? This is a very controversial thing, because people think that you can either only get freedom, right? Or, well, you have a lot of history on this. So sacrificing freedom in order to have equality, or sacrificing fairness in order to have freedom. But it's a false choice, because you can actually have both. And so social anarchism is basically a philosophy in which you believe that people have the autonomy, they should be autonomous, they should have freedom to do the things they want to do, to hone their skills, to develop their talents, and then put all of that into a community, into social account, into something greater. And so we talk about being autonomous, at the same time creating interdependence, which means we're all connected to each other. We build trust. It's not that it's trustless, it's the opposite. We build trust, and then we trust our system, right? And so we published the paper last June, a Radical Exchange conference, and then we started these working groups, and we called the working groups, and they were like different task forces. One was governance, one contribution metrics, value flows. We have now a crypto art one. We have now one in Spanish as well. We welcome anyone, it's completely open. And they became quickly sense-making sessions in which we talk about everything and we go really deep into things. And we realized that the process that we were doing this no agendas, no time limits, no structure. It was feeling really similar to the way we draw data and the feelings that we get. And we also noticed that our chat on Telegram was the same. So on DADA, we don't have trolling or bullying or any of that. We don't have any, all of that kind of bad behavior gets neutralized. And we noticed, and we thought that, well, it's creativity, it's you're making art, it's our environment, our control environment. But then we realized that on this video conference and on the chat, which is public, we didn't have shilling, we didn't have people being aggressive or bullying, or it. So it became evident that there is something about the environment that really informs how do we actually behave. And so one of the main takeaways, I think, from the work that we have done or last year with these sense-making sessions, and this involves a lot of research, a lot of like data analysis, a lot of thinking, is that when you have an environment, as we have on let's say on crypto art today, the crypto art market is basically you have a group of artists and a group of collectors. The group of artists are already in disadvantage comparing with the collectors because artists need to sell in order to live. Collectors or investors, they don't need it, right? So they already have the bargaining power on their favor. And so you have artists competing against each other for the collectors, and you have collectors competing against each other for what they consider to be the valuable art or the valuable artist. And so because the market can't really measure anything that is not quantifiable, then the market quantifies things like scarcity, historical importance, FOMO, hype, things like that. And so they put a price that is completely arbitrary, and price have nothing to do with value, right? And the price always is pushed up, and this is pushed up by the entire ecosystem, by the press, by the curators, by the galleries, by everybody, by the platforms. And then there is a secondary market that forms. So collectors are buying low from artists, and then they're reselling very high. And now what the crypto art markets are saying is like, we're great because we are giving royalties to artists, and that never happened before. But we're actually just only transferring 90% of the wealth of the artist into collectors, which is not very different than 100%. And so what we really have here, if you think about it, is an environment. It's not just that the market, the competition and the scarcity. It's really that you have an environment in which you're valuing competition, scarcity, and speculation with extrinsic and quantitative incentives that are basically producing the same things that we see in the real world, which are a few winners, extreme inequality, and value extraction from, in this case, the artist. And out of the boundaries are everything that is qualitative, everything that is intangible, everything that is intrinsic, because the market cannot deal with things like beauty. They cannot deal with things like, I just love to do this, and I don't care that you don't like it or you like it, or this, it doesn't matter. It's just this amazing feeling by doing this art. And so we're basically completely changing. We took all those structures that we learned from the technology, blockchain, the economy, and from social layers, and we, like Legos, and we just rebuilt it based on what was our own experience on data and our own experience through the invisible economy. And so this is not a utopia. This is actually based on observation and trusting the system, trusting our process. And so the environment then is it's an environment of collaboration, of abundance, and of creativity. The incentives are all intrinsic and qualitative. The outcome that we all feel is that we feel we're fulfilled. We feel that there is a safety net, and that is what we're building, is a safety net, so that nobody gets like falls through the cracks. And what's out of boundaries are the speculation, the competition, the scarcity, and the extrinsic rewards. So we're not really, we don't ban anything. We don't have constitutions. We don't have vetting. It's completely open. Anyone can join DADA. Anyone can join the sessions of the invisible economy. It's just that the environment is such that if you're a speculator and you want to speculate with DADA joints within the invisible economy, you can't, because you can't buy joints and you can't resell them. And so if you want to speculate with our token, you can't, because it's actually invisible and you can only earn it. And you don't even know when you earn it or why necessarily. And so for those people, it's just easier to go somewhere else, right? And so overview of where we are is in the governance, and this is another important thing. It's like that we're still figuring out is what is the governance model then, right? And there's no model that works for us in the world, and then through this we realize, okay, so we have the sense-making sessions. We can define processes for things that need to be done. Let's say code or organizing an art exhibition and things like that. We can break those tasks, and anyone could take on any given task, and hopefully eventually you automate a lot of that, right? But anyone, whoever wants to do a task can do it, and then it's a matter of how you measure the contribution. And we realize that we actually don't measure contribution, we just represent the contribution by tracking the actions and by representing the value that we get while doing the action. Because for us, since it's intrinsic, then the action in itself is the reward. And then it becomes, okay, so based on that, we can define levels of how do we assign governance privileges or different stages, and how do we reward the token. So this is an example that we did. We did a live joint performance in Rome last October, right in the window where Rome was open. And so some people were online, drawing live. Some people were on site, drawing live, and some people were just online. And so we tracked what were the things that people contributed to. And we also made ask people afterwards, how did they feel during the joint performance and after, and then created a representation of how everyone felt. And so you can see that instead of having a leaderboard with some numbers, we actually have art that represents how we feel, and that is also informs how it gives you a sense of how the actual community feels. And then we went deeper on that and are working on different ways of visualizing what can we make. What is it that, if we're making invisible everything that is transactional and numbers and prices and things like that, what are the things that we can make visible? And so these are feelings of different days in a week. You see the white lines are people, and the color thingies are feelings. And these are how the community felt each day of that week. And we can track things like when people goes into, on the left, where people goes into DADA, and what do? They draw, they like, they comment, what are the things they're doing. And when you see the lighter one is very early in the morning, and then it goes through the day, and the dark one is at night. Or on the right, you can see these are visual conversations that look like a centipede, like a river. And it has tons of information, like where are the the countries of the people that are participating in those conversations, the amount of likes, the colors of the conversation. And so you can see that there's so much information that you can actually make visible that is a lot more important for us than having a leaderboard with some top sales. It changes completely the way you interact in this environment. And so the system model of DADA's invisible economy is basically everything that is on top, that's what is visible, the art, the people, the relationships, the connections between people. Everything that has to do with money and transactions are invisible, and it's what you see on the bottom. And so another way of looking at that is that you have the DADA community making a lot of art. It doesn't matter how we make money. Like, it wouldn't matter at this point. It could be like the most, like t-shirts, whatever, it doesn't matter, because the money that comes in, having the economy being invisible, we know that we're protected. We have the necessary protections and the necessary ways of valuing contribution within our ecosystem, that when money comes in, it's gonna not destroy the community, but instead nurture it and create that safety net. And so the ground truth for us, is for the visible economy, is that every action, it's made because of intrinsic motivations. So we consider those actions priceless, and that action in itself is my reward, and at the same time is a contribution to the community, which is the commons. And so I will just end the presentation to start the conversation saying that when we started, we were really trying to separate data from the market. So you can see the first hill is what we're leaving behind, the art world, the crypto art world. And we are now in a moment in which we have already allowed money come in without disrupting our community. So we, instead of optimizing for money, the system optimized for protection of the intrinsic rewards and the intangible values. But we think that there is another here that we already can see, in which we can leave behind entirely, because now we're connected to the market, entirely leave behind the market, entirely leave behind blockchain and its speculation, and go into a much more aligned infrastructure, which is holochain. And this is, Jacob can talk a little bit about it. That feels more natural in order to not just protect intrinsic motivations, but actually nurture intrinsic motivations and value everything that is intangible and we consider priceless. And so yeah, so this is DADA's invisible economy. Everyone is welcome, and yeah, thank you so much. Let's start the conversation.
Beatrice, thank you for sharing. I think there was a lot of topics you open up, so I hope that we'll be able to develop more. But before we dig into, like into invisible economy itself, because you were a lot of talking about this intrinsic motivation, maybe I would be very much like interested to hear also from all of you, like to create the data. What was the motivation and expectation, at the moment? Like maybe also like I hear this like mode of collectiveness. So I would like to maybe like hear like what was the motivation like? Was it market? Was it the situation of art? Was it like what was not something that was working? Like there was a gap? Like so maybe Bea, if you could start, and then we will maybe ask
or Judy, let Judy go.
Well, we created DADA around 2014, and originally at the very beginning, before it was a visual conversation platform, Bea and I had met through advertising. She was a successful commercial artist, and I used to hire her to do wonderful, beautiful stuff. And we were trying to solve the problem of sourcing talent, meaning you know, like it was so difficult to find reliable artists that we could trust, or also more talented people and not always use the same people. And so we were both trying to solve this problem. And there were some communities out there that were already like, you know, Behance or Society 6, or, you know, where you could have a lot of artists showing their work, but it was like looking at for a needle in a haystack. And so that's the problem we thought we were solving we really wanted to create.
Because it sounded it is all of that is true, but it sounded so wrong, like looking for better.
Well, I'm gonna get there. I mean, that was at the very, very, very beginning, and we wanted actually not only that, but we really wanted to create a community, because all these other platforms just didn't have a community. It was just people putting their stuff, and there was no real engagement between people. We wanted to empower artists to help each other. But then Bea had this insight, I think this eureka moment, where she said, you know what, artists, no one is ever going to come here unless we give artists the tools to be themselves and to really do what they do best, which is to draw. And so artists need to draw. They need to draw. And that's where DADA became a completely different thing. We stopped worrying about finding talent, you know, and we created this this platform with a very simple tool, as you saw at the beginning, where people could have a conversation. And this is very, very important, because there were other platforms where you could draw with other people, or where you could draw by yourself, or we could draw on top of what other people were drawing. But Bea always said that as an artist, as a visual artist, and she felt kind of discriminated by the tyranny of the word. We all communicate with words all the time. All social media is words all the time. But what about the people who are more eloquent when they draw, when they create art? So she wanted this to be a conversation. She wanted this to be, you know, a dialogue. And I think that this is why DADA is so special and so unique, is that what happens, as she explained, once you make a drawing and then all of a sudden you will get you will get a notification that says that somebody replied to your drawing, and you open up that notification, and what you get is this gift. You get this, you made a gift at DADA because you took time to draw and to put your feelings out there, and your talent, whatever it is that you're doing, which is actually free self-expression, because there's no intention there to sell anything or to produce anything. And then you get a response. And I always say that these conversations are kind of like music jams, you know, where somebody starts with a theme, with colors, with shapes. And what is amazing is that people follow that, because they're actually having a dialogue. And so that's where we took it. It became really more like an art, like an art canvas, like less of a practical thing. But we always felt that artists needed to be able to live sustainably from their art. We always felt that the art that they created was valuable, whether people wanted it or not. And so we were trying to figure out how can we capture that value. And that's how it started.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. So maybe Lenara, how you got involved in that, if I could ask also.
Sure. So basically, Bea found me. Like, I guess it's amazing. She has a talent to kind of like finding, connecting to people. Just kind of out of nowhere came my message and say, oh, I saw that you've been researching money and art. And so like, can we talk about it, you know, like, how can we do this like in a different way? And they were also starting to work with a blockchain and things like that. So yeah, and that was amazing, really, to find so many things in common. I guess like from the social anarchism to all kinds of, you know, different perspective of basically building like a better thing with the technology we have, and maybe that we don't have yet, but we're working on it. Yeah, and that was, I guess, when was it, Bea? It was like right when you started this first collection, right? The Creeps and
Yeah,
Weirdos,
3 years
or right?
ago, yeah. 3 years and a half.
Yeah. And basically, yeah, the idea of maybe building actually a whole new economic model, you know, for this.
So we've been doing it together, creating it together, yeah, for the last year, right? All of us and more people.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing how also it's an experience that we have that, okay, there's this insights and these visions, and then the tools that we need, or the people that hold, you know, the knowledge and the tools for that, kind of gravitate towards this, like almost by some kind of weird attraction causality, that they arrive and then, oh, they can actually contribute some really important skills and, you know, passion to it. And it really, like, we've been moving really fast, actually, if you think about it, in terms of like accomplishments, you know, being able to come up with this crazy idea. You wouldn't even think it's possible, just some crazy utopia or something like that. But we are in the middle of building something and doing a lot of progress. So that's really impressive, I would say.
They always say that we've been doing this with no money at all, because it didn't make any sense to raise money and hire people, right? If we're all about intrinsic rewards, it had to be about, well, who is interested in doing this and with us. And so no money whatsoever, no strings attached, no conditions, no quid pro quo, nothing. And we have a group of incredible people just like putting their knowledge and their thoughts and their time and everything into this when they want, when they can, and it just works so beautifully.
Yeah, and also I think there's a feeling that comes that this is something very much needed. So it's something that should exist, and you know, that feels right. And if you look around, because you don't see it, people actually feel that something is missing. So when they see that there's a group of people working on it, immediately actually lots of people get drawn to it, because they really feel that this is something that needs to exist, you know. And if you can help bringing it to an existence, you know, the better. And that's totally like a reason enough to do it, you know, and put whatever time you have, you know, for this task.
Jakob has
Cool.
his hand up, but I will just interject. That's exactly why I am here, right? Is when I came into the blockchain space, I imagined it to be what we're now creating. It didn't exist then. So I feel that need that Lenara was describing to help make it exist.
Maybe just a question, because what piqued my curiosity was that when I was looking at the let's say the images or the representations of what's happening in the community, so I noticed that a lot of it is kind of what I would say it's considered positive emotions or positive kinds of interactions. And so I was curious also, because it in my experience, even in experienced communities, sometimes conflict or storming or some turbulences are kind of a integral part of this development. So whether you also somehow relate to or visualize perhaps something that could be considered negative.
So in one of the visualizations, you could see that there were like a lot of reds, the ones about the feelings. There were reds and there were blues. But the blues ones were people who were either sad or angry before they came to DADA. And after they came to DADA, they actually changed. They got relaxed or they got well, right? So there's something about the environment that neutralizes this, and it's probably had to do with the fact that you're doing something out of passion and just out of, and then you get into, you're not doing this alone, you're getting this into a community that is, it becomes really stimulating. It becomes like Sparrow always says, you always say that this making sessions is what gave you energy to do everything else, your job and the 100 things that you do, right? Because it's stimulating and it's, you create these connections and it's just a beautiful thing. And we forget that, I mean, my life before this wasn't like, it was like meeting after meeting, back to back, a million things, you know, a lot of a thing that I had to go on checklist and never ending. Now we really go with the flow, and it becomes a completely different thing. So to answer your question, one of the slides was the sentiment analysis that Massimo, one in our group who is a data scientist, did of the Telegram group. And we were not surprised, but it was kind of surprising to see that a Telegram group in crypto, which tends to be really aggressive, and that was like the top words were all, it's a chat about economy, but the top word was art, artist, love. And it's not that we're this kind of new agey people, right? Like, it's just that it feels good. We talk about anything. It can be from the ethical perspective, emotional, we're vulnerable, it can be very intellectual. It doesn't matter, but it just feels good to be able to do it, to have meaningful conversations with people. And obviously that's gonna create connections. And obviously that's gonna make something, make you feel that you belong, something that is bigger than you. So
in terms of that, I think that there may have been a couple, I mean, it's interesting that we have been doing it since 2014, and I can only think of 2 instances of hundreds of thousands where there may have been some feelings. And one was very interesting because we decided to create a robot that was, well, not to create a robot, but we worked with an artist who developed an AI who took the data set of our drawings to teach AI to draw. And in 3 weeks, this robot was making a bunch of drawings that kind of we call it
a better word than
like this GAN, and what happened was that we decided to kind of experiment and put one, like we injected one of the GAN's drawings into one of the conversations, and people drew, and then some people found out that it was a robot that had done that, and we hadn't really told the community, whatever, and some people were really upset. But what you could see how upset they were, because they were drawing that they were upset. They were like, fuck this robot, who needs a robot? Like, you don't have my permission to use a robot, but it's there. So that is one instance. And the other instance is there was one person that at some point was a little bit toxic, and somehow it was toxic in other social media, but behaved beautifully on DADA. And there was a bit of like what you call like some friction there, but the community neutralized it. Actually, when they saw what was going on, to a certain extent, people said, this is not how you behave here. So I do believe very, very strongly that the environment is what creates the behavior. And so the environment that you design creates the behavior. So when people talk about, oh, it's in human nature to be competitive, or it's in human nature to be aggressive, or it's in human nature to want to be first, well, that's if that's the system that you design. Because in DADA we have no leaderboard. So we used to have a leaderboard, and an artist noticed that it was creating a little bit of competition and friction outside of DADA. So we took away the leaderboard, and the problem solved. And so depending on what you give, the tools that you give people, or the experience that you give people, you're going to have a completely different outcome.
And Sparrow, do you want to talk about how that translates in terms of governance? Because that's very interesting. Like we decided not to have, well, we never need a vote or sanctions or any of that.
Or a constitution or rules written down or anything. So yeah, the concept of a visual conversation and people replying to each other, truly hearing each other and replying to each other, translated really well, unintentionally, right? Subconsciously, to these sense-making sessions, which were called task force and then working groups. And then we finally, you know, I think agreed that they feel like sense-making sessions. But those sessions, just like on the conversations of DADA, someone proposes a topic, they make that initial drawing that has particular colors or a particular subject. And then whoever wants to, and anyone can, that's key, can reply to that, picking up on those colors or that content, or doing whatever they want in response to that initial drawing. All of our governance mechanisms, the Telegram chat that Bea was talking about, the sessions that we have 4 or 5 times a week, are all based around that similar principle of someone starts the conversation on a particular topic and other people pick up on that and add to it and develop it. And it is a real back and forth community group conversation of people deeply listening to each other and deeply responding to each other. And that really has produced magic in all of the places where this community operates.
Okay, so maybe so thank you for sharing so far. I would like to also ask our who watch us on YouTube or is out in Discord channel, feel free to throw a question and join us for this discussion. Thank you for giving us this brief introduction. Like, have you managed the discussion? Have you managed this cyberbullying? Have the communities, have you created this collectivity? But maybe what I would like to bring now more, it's like, because what I understand now I start to be interested in the blockchain is that from the like artistic point of view, I see it very much about like to be like this imaginative tool actually, which on the one hand it very much serves the financial aspect of art, and it helps very much. And also we will have Martin Thallinger, his lecture in 2 days actually talking about the hypercommodification and also aesthetical aspect of the NFTs. But I would like to bring more now, because also like what you are building here and what you imagine, like what's the like I would like to ask, what's the concept you were mentioning with your concept, this safe net actually, what it is, like what we can see behind this safe net concept. That's maybe where my question is heading actually, because the blockchain, as I see, it's imaginative too, and through it we can imagine different like variation of what art is and what it could be. But in the end, we very much end with this like financialization of art.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what else is there? What is this? Maybe the safe net? Am I heading to the right direction?
Yeah, well, I think what is important, and this is, I mean, I hope a lot of artists are looking at this, because that's, I think, what we need the most in this ecosystem is artists thinking about the technology, not just selling NFTs, but actually thinking and building tools for this technology. And so you can think about it very simply. Like the blockchain is this new layer, technological layer that is incredibly in terms of innovation. But then this technology layer has embedded a social layer and an economic layer. And so when you mix the three of them, then you have a governance of the whole thing. So you basically have this incredible new tool, but everything that is in the social layer, we're just reproducing, or well, not us, but the ecosystem is just reproducing everything, bringing whatever we know from social media into this. And we know that social media is quite toxic, and we're bringing that into this ecosystem. And then everything that is economic, we're just bringing markets and finance and whatever we know it on top. So it's basically as if you took Twitter with all the toxicity, or Facebook with all the toxicity, and made a cryptocurrency on top of it. And you're basically incentivizing the worst behaviors, and now you're paying, and people are going to make money with the worst behaviors. That's what the blockchain is doing. And so if we will forget about that for a second, what we are doing is we are a community of artists, first of all, and it's not that we want to redefine it. It's like we're playing with all of this. We're playing with the technology, we're playing with economics, we're saying, fuck it, this is not for economics PhD. If you actually deal with economics in your day life, you have total legitimacy to actually create your own economics, right? So what we have that the crypto world doesn't have, the financial world doesn't have, is actually imagination, and it's actually a complete disregard from conventions. And so we can imagine new things, and we can just go and play with them and do it seriously and really redefine how we interact with each other, how money is. Like, we can make our own money now. Well, but do we need money? Or do we actually create something that is better than money? Do we?
Yeah.
Go for it.
We can make that money represent whatever we want it to represent, because it's ours. So it can represent the intangible values that we want it to, because it's ours. And if someone else believes that those intangible values are valuable to them as well, so if they value creativity, they value self-expression, they value self-sovereignty, right? True freedom, not coerced freedom, not do this and I'll give you some tokens, but do what you want, what you decide to do, what you yourself are motivated to do, not what someone else decides to incentivize you to do. That's true freedom. And we can put that and represent it in a token that we create. That's really powerful.
So in terms of the safety net, what we were thinking is how we can create an economic system that is not based on scarcity, that is not based on speculation, but that at the end of the day, or like that allows artists to do what they love to do, to create art without feeling coerced to produce it, without feeling coerced to sell it, but they will get some money at the end of the, at some point. We're creating value, we're capturing the value that we have created. And it's not only the safety net, I think also has to do with the safety net of a community, with the safety net of not only, you may get money so that you can pay the rent every month, or so that it could help you somehow to do what you really want to do, which is that freedom that Sparrow is talking about. But it's also, I think, the safety net of being in a space, in a safe space, where all these incredibly aggressive speculation, incredibly brutal commodification doesn't happen, because it is incredible. It's almost violent, And so that's what the invisible, by separating the art from the market, you create, as an artist, you create the art, you belong to a community, you experiment, you play, and we're going to have a layer in which we're going to capture that value and distribute it among everyone. So also the other thing that won't happen is that you will have 5 guys at the top making all the money, where like everyone else doesn't get anything, which is unfortunately what is being replicated in the crypto art.
So let me say something about that, because usually before, we don't get this anymore, but in the beginning people will say, well, you're gonna lose the best artists because they will wanna sell. It's not fair if they do the most of the valuable work, and then everybody else gets whatever. So first of all, it's not that it's an equal thing. It's a way of, the market will decide whatever they decide. They will always buy the things they will want to buy and value the few artists or the few artworks. Is how we distribute that, which is under our own value. So all the things that we value, which are in general intangibles, those are the things that are counted on the system. So it's by acting. So you could be an artist making art that the market doesn't want, or you never sell, or they don't like, or whatever, because you're too advanced, too provocative, or too amateur, and you still gonna get your value back because you are adding value to our community in different ways. You can be an amateur who is drawing passionately every day, and that's an enormous value, right? So that's the most important thing, is that we're composing, Lenara, we're composting, yeah, go for it, composting this like energy that is money coming in into something that is actually according to the values, and of course people want to be part of it, because when we talk about a safety net, it's like, if you really ask most people, not just artists first off, because we have at least a clear understanding of what we want to do in life, but anyone will actually tell you, like, you prefer to have safety, like, say, I will have 5 years that I don't have to worry about finding a job or doing some bullshit job, that I can actually dedicate to do my art, my music, my writing, my philosophy, whatever it is, than to say, well, you may have the opportunity to earn $100,000, maybe not, maybe yes, maybe. It's like, no, I just need what I need to do what I love. So let me just give me the enough so that I can do that. But it actually, because it's the commons and it's collective, I mean, the power of collective thinking, the power of collective energy is actually exponential. So it's not that you're just going to get the basics. It's actually, what we're seeing is that it's a lot much more value for everyone.
For me, it's really clear, even from the beginning, like, one of the main characteristics of DADA is that you don't go to just put your art alone. You go to have a conversation with others, and every drawing is like part of a whole, and is influenced by the ones that come before or after, or so it really is something that you do collaboratively and from the beginning. And I think that even I believe, like, because I also been studying collaborative art projects for a long time, and that it kind of like also attracts people that want that, like, we're saying, oh, this is much needed, and is attracting people that are drawn to it. So it also attracts artists that for them it is really valuable to be able to draw together with others, and to have this collaboration. And that might be other artists that for them actually what they most value is to have complete control over their artwork, and they don't want anybody else to connect visually to their art. There might be people like that, and they won't be so much drawn to a collaborative platform. So I think that also set the tone for having a collaborative economy, and and this feeling of contributing something to the commons, like our collectively owned wealth, so to speak, in different aspects, be from cultural commons or natural commons, or all kinds of things that we own, or it's not like we even like ownership, we talk in a different way. Like the traditional ownership is something that there are all these rights connected to it. For example, the right to exclude. So if I own someone, I can exclude anyone else. Like I have a little plot of land and I put a fence around, basically, right? And also have the right to destroy. So if I have, let's say, also a little plot of land or whatever it is that I have, I can just completely destroy it. But we are thinking that it's something that is not, you actually don't have that. It's something that you own. You're more like stewarded together with others. You don't have the right to destroy it, because the main reason is, that you are there as this like owner or steward is actually to protect something valuable, right? And also to, as you do it together with others, it also doesn't make sense to have the right to exclude, because the whole point is to have several people have access to it. And that will actually make it increase its wealth and its value to have all those people. So it's a whole different perspective on things, and that also, you know, is present in everything that is connected to this economic model, you know, and how to acknowledge the value that the artists are bringing, right? There is this thing, oh, the artists, they don't make money because what they make is not valuable. I don't think that's the case at all. You know, it's extremely valuable. And one of the things that we are seeing, for example, during this whole, you know, time since the pandemic started, is people saying, if it was not for art or literature or movies, I couldn't really survive. And at the same time, like things that they thought was really, you know, good, like you put lots of money to, you know, buy things. Oh, I found out I can actually perfectly live without those things. They're not that important, but the art is actually.
Maybe this is a.
I feel.
Michal, I was going to say that maybe it's a good segue to maybe for Jacob to talk about holochain, because it just fits the infrastructure of holochain, fits so well with all this thinking that blockchain doesn't, because blockchain is based on scarcity and speculation, basically, and consensus too, which is also interesting. We don't believe in that kind of consensus.
Yeah. So yes, feel free.
Okay.
To elaborate.
I can say a few words. So just also for the context. So I was also I had a few months where I was working in a blockchain space back in 2017, and I was going there with kind of the utopian vision that, oh, this could help, let's say, democratize our ways of working and allocating resources. But then I kind of started realizing that it seems to me that blockchain is often serving and functioning as a kind of a Rorschach blot, that people kind of project either their kind of wishes or their fears and concerns. And that's very interesting, because there's very different groups seeing very different kind of possibilities with blockchain, right? And so I got the chance to actually meet the team of Holochain back in Liechtenstein, where they were having kind of the hackathon, and I really liked back then kind of the energy, and also the fact that they were coming from a very different background than the usual, let's say, blockchain or tech, like cryptography background, and that was currency design, which was like pre-cryptography, right? So Arthur, the co-founder of Holochain, was helping in different villages and projects and network, and also art communities kind of create their own types and kinds of currencies, which were tailored to the purpose of the system in such a way that it could reflect and somehow capture the values of the group, for example. And this was kind of the basis of how and why Holochain was conceived, and the technology was to be serving this purpose. And so for me, what I really found interesting or I really liked is that in comparison to blockchain, there is not like one ground truth. There is not the global consensus, like one reality of one data, which is, let's say, enforced over the whole global network. But it is, so this is what the Holochain group calls data-centric, right? That there is the one version of the data, usually on most blockchains. And Holochain was coming at it from a different perspective, that every agent is going through, like perceiving the world through his own perspective. And this should be reflected in the, let's say, his chain or the kinds of information one is committing or inscribing. And then, I will not be going into technical details, but one of the results is that you can create your own networks, like community circles, where you define your agreements or rules, which allow you to exactly start crafting the currency. And there was also one big difference from the, let's say, standard blockchain discourse, and that it was a less focus on tokens, at least let's say, the naive definition that we are used to in the mainstream media, like free floating things that we can speculate on the market, but more towards peer-to-peer accounting, more towards so-called mutual credit systems, or asset-backed currencies, which are actually tied to some real economy or some kind of value, which the community actually decides what it is for them. And so this ability to interconnect those small networks and circles and define membranes also. It's not like that there is one big boundaryless market, but it's different membranes where the communities define their rules or agreements, which are then encoded in the DNA of the application. And because the holochain language is full of biological metaphors, as you can see when you look it up. Yeah, anyways, I think I'm speaking too long, but those were some of the aspects of which I really liked about holochain. And then I was really excited when I had a chance to speak with you, with DADA art, because the explorations on the borders of like invisible economy, that was very close to what I'm interested in. Yeah. So I'm really happy for the chance.
Thank you. No, that was great. Actually, it's like we're fascinated by it's like this infrastructure seems to be perfect for the kind of thinking of commons and abundance and lack of speculation, but really concentrating on trust and connections and all of that. So now what is interesting is that we now have the, talking about NFTs, the task of figuring out what an NFT looks like on holochain where there is no tokens. And it's actually becoming obvious that it might be a much more interesting type of asset that can capture more interesting things, that is not just this thing that you can buy and sell, right? But that you can actually take more on the potential of the technology in things like, you know, what you can do in terms of creative collaboration with this NFT technology, or expanding the legal frameworks of remixing art and things like that. It is possible now. It just, if we continue in this path of scarcity and speculation, we're never going to get there. But I think holochain does open that door again. I hope we don't fuck up.
Yeah. And exactly, this was my thought. It's like, perhaps it's another Rorschach blot, but this one is kind of getting perhaps closer, even like with the experimenting already that, yeah, we can sense that it's closer towards something healthier, for me at least.
I'm just right now thinking about this, you know, this collectiveness or collectivity, actually, because, you know, with the blockchain in general, like, or the, let's call it maybe the traditional, so far when there is none, because there is none one, and there is not one, but in some traditional sense, you know, like, for example, the word of community was overused, you know, and turned more into like some like marketing tool, you know, like a vehicle which can like foster, you know, and bring new people into the system, like kind of like, you know, these pyramid schemes. But in you know, talking about this collectiveness and collectivity, I think also this is what is a little bit like also market and competition in the end. What is happening in the art world, you know, like that you see these like kind of rejections of the competitions, like which happened like in a Turner Prize, or else like because we are in Czech Republic and Slovakia, you have this prize for the young artists. It's Chalupeckého cena in Czech Republic, and they rejected like to be competitive, and they wanted to work on this in this collaborative sense actually, and maybe this is like interesting traits, also like an interesting topic also in general for trace art, you know, to focus this collectivity of artistic group, like creating this collective, because this is exactly what is against this, you know, phenomenon, like very like romantic idea of the artist as an individual creator, you know, like crafting something somewhere within his workshop. But in the end, you also find out that when you have these most famous artists in their workshops, were basically like a bunch of people working for them, you know, for very low salaries, creating like a very high level, high skilled level products actually. So maybe like this is like maybe how you find this the holochain as a good, let's say, like a type of blockchain which could be applied for your idea, for your what you imagine the blockchain, the technology could be used for, based on this like kind of the communitiveness, collectiveness. Is it like, what do you, maybe also like this, the Sparrow, I would maybe like ask you, because you are so like, your topic is like the woman within the crypto art. Let's see, like how have you, would you a little bit elaborate in terms of this like collaborativeness and creating community? How do you feel the aspect of woman within the crypto is can help to foster? Maybe that's my the question.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's quite a stereotype, that naturally women will be more cooperative and nurturing and, all of that. You get the whole spectrum. What I will say is that from the women that I've spoken to, they found it difficult to be, and still do find it difficult to be seen and heard, particularly on crypto Twitter, because the voices there are very loud, very noisy, very aggressive, and they have a network, right? And have had relationships amongst themselves since the year, since the blockchain started, mostly. And so anybody coming in afterwards, if you weren't already in that network or couldn't find a way into that network, you may as well not have existed. So for me, in that way, DADA and Woka are very similar, right? Because they're the space that can be created for the misfits within the misfits that are blockchain, right? The people who are attracted to blockchain are not generally mainstream. They're looking for something different. They're looking for alternatives. And I think in that world, there needs to also be alternatives. And that's really the positioning of Woka. It's also why DADA is so attractive.
Yeah, but there is also true. I mean, it's also true that it's mostly male dominated, the ecosystem. It's interesting because there's a lot of women in blockchain from the start, when not just crypto art, but in blockchain in general, and also in high positions of decision making. Yet it's the culture is extremely male, or the stereotype of male, so like domination, competitive. There's this like loudness that is this space that is kind of overwhelming. I mean, I'm a woman, but I can be like a man in that sense. Like that doesn't, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be pretty aggressive, and in general, right? Like you just don't care. But did I want to continue to be that person that didn't care, that had to go on, over everyone to get what I needed or wanted, even if it's for a good cause, right? Just like move on. So that culture becomes really overwhelming for people who, whether they're women or men, it doesn't matter. It could be, somebody in Latin America doesn't speak English. It could be a man who just doesn't have that in them. But that is the culture, and either you're within that culture or you're out, and there's no alternative, and that is the problem.
What we saw in the blockchain, I think that what is interesting is how you call it. It's an imaginative exercise. It's an imaginative tool, and what we saw, which was interesting to us when we discovered it, was not only that finally we could actually take the drawings and tokenize them, and people could own them, and like the more practical aspect of the NFTs. But what we saw was a completely a pretext to really imagine a completely different system. And what I think, and because we were very early on, the people who were around us also trying to, tokenize art and everything. I think the idea was that we were going to really do something very alternative to the established art world, where that looked like speculation, and star systems was like through the roof, and compared to the crypto art, they seem rather timid if you think about it, because so there's something kind of like intrinsically kind of libertarian maybe about the blockchain, or it attracts certain people because of the peer-to-peer, the transparency and the peer-to-peer. It can swing in different ways, right? It can swing in the way that we thought, well, this is a real opportunity to put the power in the hands of people, to create, strong communities, whereas other people are thinking, I'm going to just like fill my bags with money, and who cares about anything else, because I can do it, because now it's peer-to-peer, and I can do so many things without permission. And so there is I think like a range, no? Like in everything, like the internet can be the most spectacular thing on earth, and it can be the most abject thing on earth. And there's like everything in between. I think with blockchain is the same thing. But in our case, I believe that at me personally, I was a little bit disappointed to see how easily this energy to create alternatives was completely consumed with speculation, and with making it the most competitive, speculative, crazy art, like crazy market-driven market. No, so
we got into the space in 2017. Still, it was all about making, really, like, it sounds silly now, but it really was about the opportunity to, like, everybody was talking about the unbanked, right? Like bringing the 2 billion unbanked into this new financial ecosystem, right? Like those like grandiose, really important things. And of course, next to those things, like doing something for artists seemed easy, seems like and unimportant even, right? Like, of course, like this is an amazing space. And that quickly, I mean, in a span of 2 years, because by 2019, DeFi had co-opted everything, and so everything was about decentralized finance, and now NFTs are decentralized finance. Crypto art is decentralized art finance, and so it just co-opts the system. It's not the human nature transforming the system; it's the system defining what the incentives people have, what kind of people this ecosystem attracts, and the outcomes are the ones that we know they're going to be. So I'm losing complete faith in at least in the main blockchains, but there is definitely still pockets of people and groups really trying to change things. So I will encourage anyone who's listening to this. There are those groups like us doing amazing work, and just go with them, and make that energy be more loud than the speculation and all the silliness.
I mean, one of the fathers of systems thinking, right, Stafford Beers, defined the purpose of a system is what it does, and that's it. The results that you get are the purpose of the system. And if you look at what is happening, and you look at the results that we're getting in any system, in blockchain, in the real world, wherever you go, those results, that's always going to be the outcome of that system. If you don't want those outcomes, you have to do and create a different system.
And this reminds me, Spero, if I didn't jump in, if you didn't want to follow. And it's like, because this reminds me, like, listening to this, and I will get back into to the question of that woman, because it stuck with me, and I don't want to sound a stereotype, but isn't it like the situation of, if you compare it, for example, to the internet development, what happened to the internet when it started in the 90s, when all these geeks, and also like within the art field, what was happening, that you have the 90s of the internet created this net art movement, which can be, I think, considered as avant-garde, because they were really working with the new medium, and not just that's not my thinking. The challenges the system brought, and how the artist, or whoever we call artist, who wants to develop it in different manner than it was predicted. But in the end, what happened, we have 30 years of the internet now. We have it turned into this, like, a global enterprise owned by just a few different companies, actually, which control the wealth, and control the system, how it's organized, actually. And we all are fueled into it, and we all somehow agreed with it, and in the all legal terms, actually. So the question, because also when I was reading some reports, like, they compare blockchain to internet, and they compare it to, like, that it's like British report, it's, I think, 3 years old now, and they said that it's like development of the internet in the early stages, actually. So we are still in this phase of negotiating. As I'm talking about blockchain, not the one blockchain. It's blockchain is some kind of technology, actually, which manifests in many forms. But right now we are in the phase when it's very early one, actually. And it's interesting that it's, in terms of, like, producing, and maybe what's, like, also Ruth Catlow from Fatherfield is, like, asking, for them, and trying to work with it, because on one hand it really turned into this, like, dump of financizations, and that's it, because it's all about the money, and the system, we were talking maybe about, runs that's its own rule to produce money, like, that's the only outcome. So my question is, like, because with project that is yours, with such a collectiveness you create, and the quality you can bring through it, to bring, because the what you were very much working with is this, like, you were using this intrinsic motivation, or intrinsic value, that how people are connected to it, actually. And that's why maybe my next question would ask it, like, so this is just like the call for people who have same value system, who are tending to believe that we can imagine something different, to somehow bring you to your galaxy, and through this, like, kind of consensual working to create this new quality. Is it what the DADA wants to be about, or should be about?
No.
Maybe I'm misleading.
Yeah, it is actually, from my perspective at least. If we go back to the image that Bea showed in her presentation of the hills, right? At the moment, DADA is that protected environment where new things can be created. And so it really is just, the protection is needed because the current system co-ops everything that it comes in contact with. And so in order to have any alternative to that system, if anyone should want an alternative, you need that protective layer to be able to have an alternative. Otherwise, it will just get co-opted as well. And then you're in a supermarket with 1,000 different varieties of cereal, all not very nutritious.
Or the same company behind, maybe 2 companies behind, right?
Yes, exactly.
But the other thing I wanted to say is that in our sense-making sessions, we have had people that are not artists, that are not involved in the world of art, but that feel that this economy, or that these system could actually be applied to other communities. It doesn't necessarily have to be artists. We have we have someone who participates frequently who is a doctor. She's a gynecologist and she works in public health, and she's trying to see how she could apply some of these things. We have people in India who are trying to create some agricultural community. So the idea behind
when we talk to journalists, they immediately feel it resonates to them, right? Because journalism is another important type of work that is completely co-opted by money, like what they decide to publish or not, or so on. So sorry.
So in that sense, we feel that people who are aligned will gravitate towards us. At the same time, we're an alternative. So like somebody was saying once that when I was explaining that we are going to distribute everything among everyone, somebody said, yeah, well, the good artists are going to be kind of like subsidizing the rest. And like, who cares? That's not even, number one, that doesn't matter. And number two, which is most important, is those good artists, or people who have big egos or whatever, they can continue being who they are outside of DADA, and they can sell art outside of DADA, and they can get that out of their system. But in DADA, they're going to do something else. And they're going to participate in a different way.
But also it's not true that they're subsidizing anything.
No, that is also not true.
It's a very narrow view of how economics actually.
Well, and it perpetuates that notion of the individual genius, right? I mean, the whole thing. You can be Picasso, yeah, but you wouldn't have made that drawing if it weren't for the drawing of the artist before you in the conversation.
And this
right?
Many artists and anybody, if it wasn't for somebody who's dead, who you read when you were in college, and somebody thinking about things next to, right? It's like it's a whole collective thing.
Yeah, and the idea that all these things, like especially this cultural commons, as I call it, this is something that is like immense wealth that was created not by one person, like let's say, Picasso or whoever, we like to put the names of someone who did something, or maybe an inventor of a technology or something like that. But this, like, we arrived as a society into the point where a Picasso could exist, or an invention could be created, and all the influences that are around. So this is part of like something that the wealth that was created collectively by definition, and especially in art, like you don't create it like in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And many other things besides art. So you're just acknowledging that instead of pretending it's not like that. Kind of delusional, actually, the way we try to see it as like one great artist or one genius inventor or whatever is really not what it is in reality. We're just losing ourselves. And part of the economic system is the same. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's a way of justifying that scarcity again, and that value flows into the top. But at the end, if you think about it in terms of abundance and you recognize the value everyone is actually adding, not only can you distribute the value more fairly, but it's also that more Picasso, there's not going to be one Picasso, there's going to be a bunch of Picassos, because all those connections are going to happen. We can't have those connections happening now. And so it's just a whole different way of looking at the world.
Yeah. But to me, that example of the person who saw it as, that only means that somebody's going to subsidize the rest, is a perfect example of what is the most challenging thing, I believe, which is the way the conventional way of doing things is so ingrained in the culture. It's like in the DNA of people. People think about these things as that they cannot be changed for some reason. It's very, very hard to change that mindset. However, we are also living in a time, I think the pandemic has really brought to bear, made very transparent that this kind of system that people think they live and breathe normally as if it was a normal human thing is extraordinarily flawed and extraordinarily unfair. And I think people now are a little bit more perhaps open, or perhaps, I don't know, there's something in the air that allows ideas like this to permeate better.
I would disagree with Judy. I think in the DNA, it's actually quite the opposite. Like, you know, if we look at how all organisms evolve through cooperation and, you know, whole systems in the order of like becoming more complex, I would argue that the DNA is actually something different, and we're actually trained and brainwashed by the system to think those things. I think that's not in the DNA quite.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think it's in the DNA of the culture, not in our DNA. I think people feel it's something that's the only thing they know. I agree that our DNA may be completely different, and we're just not using it the right way, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if the culture has a DNA, but yeah, it's definitely programmed.
I do think it does.
My favorite author, Ursula K. Le Guin, has a perfect quote for this when she was talking about writing and books, and seeing those as commodities. And she said, "The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in capitalism, its power seems inescapable. But then, so did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings."
Correct.
Yeah, because at the end it's fictions, right? It's all narratives and fictions. So that's one of the things that we learned as we were writing the Invisible Economy was Harari's, Yuval Noah Harari's take on, at the end, fictions are these things that we use to coordinate. So religions, governments,
money,
that's on everything is a fiction. And so we can change them. And if we have imagination, we can just change the narrative and become something else. So it seems actually kind of simple if you think about it.
But maybe this is what was my sorry, Lenara, did you want to say something? Do you want to add something?
No, I was just saying I agree, thumbs up. That was
No, because maybe this is the question, you know, like when we started this discussion, or maybe I started this discussion, you know, with this like statement that blockchain is imaginative tool, you know, and now we are talking about these fictions, you know, which can be brought to, you know, as a kind of the alternatives, and now we have you talking about this invisible economy, you know, about this. As I'm, you know, that we can develop much more actually, but. Right now, what I'm using is the SafeNet, because then we will get into this topic of basic income, of how this can be like distributed. So maybe we are already talking like for 80 minutes, if I'm counting right. So maybe like Sparrow, I would be interested because the thing is that you were talking about the systems actually. And I think this is mostly about like the opportunity, and when we brought this question of the fiction or imagination actually. So I believe that when you come from this interesting value system, like, do you believe that this through this kind of new kind of, because this is for me all about like new ways of networking and exchange, which are creating through this new system, which are ahead of us. We don't know what we are going there. It's the next hills, and we believe more than just one behind its steps we do. So do you believe this is the tool which could brought us there actually?
So 1 second, before you start, I just need to say that I need to jump off
okay.
Call, but it's been amazing. No, but you know, I leave you with amazing people. So it was really great. Thank you so much for the invitation, and yeah, I'm jumping off.
Yeah, and I will use this opportunity to also, because I will need to jump off. So thank you very much. Perhaps the last thing that I remember that I might add very much. Perhaps the last thing that there was.
And you stuck in the loop.
Am I?
And you stuck in the loop.
Oh, I have the feedback loop. Okay, so Oh, is it better now?
Yeah,
Yeah. I
it's good.
just the last comment from me was that when we were speaking about some of the, let's say, ideologies or patterns which are often inherent in the blockchain space. So often there is this concept of kind of sovereignty, right? Like the sovereign individual, and it's also visible in the movement for self-sovereign identity. And what I kind of liked in the holochain space, tying it back there is the concept of mutual sovereignty or sovereign accountable commons. That sovereignty, yes, that's important, but also kind of being balanced with the accountability or kind of mutually defined sovereignty within a dialogue. So yeah, that was just one thought that I was still left in my mind. So wanted to share. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you.
Okay. Thank you, Jakub. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for.
Yeah. I mean, that's really yet another like key concept. So we're talking about systems, yeah, and this is one of the reasons why, particularly, I love holochain so much, because just subtle shifts, right, in underlying concepts open up possibilities, you know, as all of the greatest science fiction does. Right? We're writing, we're creating new worlds. And I think there's something really powerful about that. And there's something really compelling that we can use these technologies to create the worlds we want to see that encode the values that we have. And holochain does that very well.
Yeah. Thank you. So see you all soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So I see that our our roundtable is falling apart somehow. Hopefully it's just how it is. So maybe maybe we can, I don't know, just thinking about the AI, that maybe it's good time to do some wrap up, and just to because we were discussing about how much time we have, and we lost somehow in the discussion. So maybe like. Let's do some close marks, because I like this, like the where we ended up with this like fiction, yeah, and maybe about the talks about these new fictions. So maybe if you could if you feel like to elaborate on it, what it really means, and what quality this could breed, it could be maybe interesting to close this discussion.
Let Lenora go first, because she has to go in 5 minutes.
Oh no, I'll just listen for 5 minutes, because I'm actually super curious to see what you want to say.
Well, to me, this idea of fictions really kind of opens up. It really is an imaginative leap, because we never have considered money or governments or as fictions. We think that there's these kind of authorities that are kind of set in stone, and to just think about them as, and the way Harari explains it, as we are the only animal who was able to coordinate by creating these imaginations, to me says, well, we have imagined this up to this time. We could certainly imagine all these other things. It's more fluid than just it is what it is, or it's like this because we said so. We said, it really kind of changes, to me, at least for me, it was kind of revelatory to think of all these structures, political structures, economic structures, social structures, as simply some story that we're telling ourselves. So we can actually tell ourselves a different story, or change the story a little bit. And it doesn't have, and that is very freeing, I think. It's actually, it's a huge, at the same time, it's a responsibility, but at least you feel that you can actually do something about it. And it's not something that is imposed on you. You can actually imagine something else. So let's imagine something else. That would be my closing remarks.
Yeah, and I guess,
So
I mean,
maybe
it all sort of comes
go ahead,
back.
Farah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Donna Haraway and her, you know, speculative fiction, fabulations, and especially the idea that there are these possible worlds that we are bringing in, you know, into existence. And I think that really that's going to be the thing that opens up the most possibilities. So we need that protection to keep everything from being co-opted in the way we have seen the internet, the web, be co-opted and centralized into just a few entities. So, you know, Ruth Catlow's work is really important in trying to keep that kind of energy and record. Her latest project is about actually recording the history so that it doesn't get co-opted. So keeping that record and opening up the possibilities for the future. It's the role for everyone. Everyone has imagination. The artists are leading the way because they're potentially more practiced at using their imagination. But everybody has it. Everybody knows. Everybody can do this. And it's when we all decide that we want something different that we can make that happen.
That's maybe I will ask Lenara if she wants to add something, because this was like I think Sparrow just
Yeah, just like
I have
a
just one remark to
very
do.
like a more like a trivia thing. I was talking like the other day to Ilan and saying that you mentioned like the early 90s and the, you know, when the kind of the web came, and for me it was such an exciting moment, and I was there and you know, doing projects and testing the possibilities of all this like decentralization, as we say now, that anybody could, you know, use these tools and publish. The whole infrastructure of the internet, you know, is decentralized. And it was really an incredible, exciting moment. And then the Web 2 was like just this, like what Judy said, or Bea, I forgot, like just like co-opted, or I think a Sparrow said that actually about the hills, right? Was co-opted by, you know, the big centralized companies. And it was just boring, and really like, what am I doing here? And where did I end up? And, you know, like all my, you know, dreams of my youth are all crushed or something. And now with the Web3, I'm feeling the same thing again by being able to take part in the DADA invisible economy, among other things. So it's like, oh, that's good. Like, you know, and I, in my lifetime, went through all this, and who knows what the next hill is going to be. But I think it's not just so much like a basic cyclical thing that, okay, good, bad, but really an evolution, like the hills, like in the drawing, they're going higher, you know, like, so now we are, from what we learned from the ones, we know, okay, so we are protecting this, so then the really transcendent higher hill can emerge. That's, at least that's what I think now. Let's see, you know, we can talk again in like 10 years and see where we're at.
Super. Because maybe I just want to add that one last remark from me would be like that I was talking about blockchain as an imaginative tool, but also like in my research I work with it as a narrative tool, actually, because I like about all the technology, which basically it's all medias, all the technology that they bring these different narratives, and that's maybe like at some point I felt like studying and following specific projects to feel more like to be led by these narratives than by the specific technologies, because you know it's ahead of time. But and that's why I also indeed brought this and thank for bringing this topic of fiction through Harari, because that's where we are. I think that we are balancing between this fiction and reality, like mixed together and creating this whatever's there. And that's why I think that's what artists are the best into doing it. Yeah, to bringing this new realities, fictional kind of from the fictions, or opposite, vice versa. So maybe that's that. I think that would be nice closing if you all agree. I feel like that Yeah, we left few people on our way. I would just like to maybe to first thank you all for joining us here from live at stage in Prague, basically in this virtual Prague, but basically anywhere in the world. I would like to also thank those of you who were watching us and who stayed with us all time. And I would like just to say that there will be like there is ahead of us a lecture of Martin Seilinger. And definitely next week we are also waiting. There will be this lecture from Laura Lotti talking about the DAOs. So we are still following, and also like Jakub, if somebody is interested in his work, in 2 days we have a workshop with Jakub's on local currencies in Czech language. So definitely there is more program coming. Festival is running until 18th of May. So thank you all. So thank you, Spero. Thank you, Lenara. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you so
Also, thank
much.
you, Beatrice.